Ladies and gentlemen, here's Michael and Mike of the Michael Decon program. It's goddamn amazing. Tonight's special guest, Daniel Duke. And now, Michael Decon and Mike Hideous.
And welcome back to another special edition of the Michael Decon program. Joining us tonight, in fact, is Mr. Daniel Duke. He is the author of the book Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure, Secret Diaries, Coded Maps, and the Knights of the Golden Circle. Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me into your hearts and into your minds. Here we are again on a night like this. Proud to be here as usual, and great to see you in the chat room. Greetings to those who listen only to the podcast rendition of this program. Still nice to see you too. Now, lots to jump into here tonight, so let's get down to brass tacks, as I believe Mike, my co-host, and the guest are patiently waiting. So let's bring them in right now. That would probably be a pretty good idea, so let's do that now. And I believe we are joined now by Mike Hideous and Mr. Daniel J. Duke. What's going on, boys?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Can't complain. Mike, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I'm here. How you doing tonight, Michael?
I'm good. Very good. In high spirits as usual. And of course, Daniel, thank you so much for hanging out with us here tonight. Lots to talk about.
Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
No problem. Let's begin with the obvious. Are you staying coronavirus free?
So far, I think I'm okay.
So far, so good.
Yep.
Very nice. What's the scene look like out there?
Well, I'm in Texas, so numbers are rising lately. They keep claiming, I don't really know. When I go out, I wear my mask and I don't have sanitizer, so I bought a bottle of Everclear and I use that. So,
hopefully
in a little spray bottle.
What was that, Mike?
I said, there you go. That'll work.
That'll work, right? That'll work.
Pickle some cherries in it too, and you can have a couple of them. Touch them down while you're cleaning up your hands.
That's what I thought. If the worst comes, I can always take the cap off the spray bottle and just have a good time. So
there you go.
All right. And of course, with all the conflicting reports flooding the mainstream media and the alternative media alike, many are beginning to lose whatever trust they once had. Daniel, I'm sure you can agree with that.
Yeah. There's a lot of, it's like on social media, I've got friends constantly fighting. I've been trying to keep out of it, but I know what you're talking about.
Oh, yes. Mike has been here with me, and he knows what I'm talking about. Mike, go ahead.
Absolutely. As I was just talking to Michael before the show, Daniel, I was telling him I just read on the internet. I live in Pennsylvania, and I just found out the governor of Pennsylvania has ordered, extended the stay-at-home order until June 6th.
My God.
Yeah, this is absolutely unbelievable.
It's hard. I can see why people want to protect themselves. I want to stay safe, but at the same time, I'm not really sure what to think. But after all this time of sitting at the house doing nothing, I got to thinking I'd rather just go out and take my chances half the time. But then I also worry about that. So I'm kind of up in the air trying to ride the fence on it, but I'm not real sure which way is the best to go.
I said the same thing to Michael when we talked. I think it was either yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I'm at this point. I'm confused.
We're confused already, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confused as to what is even the right thing to do anymore. I understand that this is a serious disease and that we need to protect ourselves, but man, oh man, this is going to just kill our economy. It's just going to flatten us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the last economic crisis we had, it seemed like we're just pulling ourselves out of that, but we're still
Right.
getting deeper into debt. We have to pay our debt, the national debt. And then when nobody's working, everything seems like it's right on the edge of collapse. And then the frustrating thing for me is you've got people saying, stay at home. You don't want to catch it. Then you've got other reports claiming people are going to get an immunity passport. So that seems like you can't work or travel unless you've got, I guess, antibodies for the coronavirus. And I thought, okay, if you're staying at home, you're not going to get the antibodies. Having an immunity passport sounds like that's trying to, or more incentive to get people to go out and catch it so they can at least have the immunity passport and they can work and travel. So yeah, it's almost like it's conflicting messages, and that just leads to more confusion.
That's true. And it doesn't help when you see Mike Pence walking around hospitals there without a mask on.
Yeah.
Poor Mike Pence. I swear he's going to catch what's going around. I swear he's going to catch what's going around, Mike. I'm telling you.
Maybe
reached a point.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. No. Go ahead, Mr. Duke.
All right. I was just going to say maybe he's got a secret vaccine. Who knows?
Right.
It's just.
That's true. You never know.
I think people are just at the point where people such as myself who are not working in places like Walmart, shopping centers, police department, fire department, post office, and UPS and Federal Express, and I depend on another source of income as a professional photographer, and as a result, I've had multiple cancellations for work. On top of it, I'm not going to be able to jump. Like I don't have anything booked until like the end of June at this point. Everything else has been canceled, and Lord knows what else might happen from this point on. So I've reached almost a breaking point at this point. I don't know what to think, because how long are they going to how long can they continually keep giving everyone in the country a stimulus check?
I don't see how they could. I mean, well, and if you keep paying out free money, what's that going to do to inflation? It's going to cheapen the dollar and raise inflation on top of the debt we've already got. And inflation's just like a hidden tax. So things are going to could get a lot harder. And that's my biggest fear, is the economic troubles that are looming.
Yeah,
right. That's absolutely right. And I said it before too. How long can we keep doing this? We were. You said it before, Daniel. We were doing so good with the economy with President Trump, and unemployment was down, jobs are up. The Wall Street was pumping, and now this. I'll tell you, if we come out of this on top, I kid you not, President Trump is going to be the greatest president this country has ever had.
I'm curious as to how it's going to turn out.
Me too. The human impact. Yeah, the human impact of this is what's incredible, really. Not only the economic collapse that we see on the horizon, but the mental health of everyone here during the lockdown. Some people are really losing it, of course, and that makes me wonder. Daniel, are you under quarantine with a loved one, per se, a significant other?
Nope. And that adds more stress. So
maybe. Well, perhaps you dodged the bullet like Mike did.
Well,
Yeah, he's got a point there, Mr. Duke. He's got a point. You don't know my history with women.
Amazing.
Well, I was laughing at the beginning. I thought, okay, you see the crime rate and how it rises every holiday. Say Thanksgiving, for example. You've got alcohol and family all pinned in together, and that always ends up, it's just a mixture for explosive problems and domestic violence.
Word.
Now you've got lockdown they keep extending it. They keep talking about, how bad is it going to get with lockdown? That's going to make Thanksgiving look like a trip to the park.
And then the possibility of a second wave coming in either October or November. What happens if that goes down? I mean, what are we talking, another friggin' shutdown? I mean, this is
It's insane.
Somebody's got to pay for this.
It's crazy.
Yeah, every day we learn something new. Go ahead, Duke.
Oh, yeah, sorry about
Mr.
that.
Duke, sorry.
Oh, I've been taking a lot of herbs and vitamins and just hoping that works out. So,
well, that helps.
That's good.
But then I need money to continue buying the herbs and vitamins. So I'm wondering how long
That's right.
storehouse of vitamins is going to last.
Not too long.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
Oh, yes. And every day we learn something new from COVID-19, as some are reporting smokers are coming out on top. I'm not sure if that means just smoking cigarettes, but it seems to have contributed to a few lives saved. Those whose immune system have been sharpened like a razor due to their habitual use of nicotine and probably even weed.
Wow.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, we've talked about this last time with Dr.
You know what?
Paul, and he
I
was
confused, Michael.
What's that?
I was confused, Michael, because I thought that smokers would be maybe more towards the top of the list because
of course,
obviously
that's what I thought.
inhaling any type of smoke is no good for your lungs. So
sure, but there's some studies here from the Chinese and French saying otherwise, and I'm not saying to go out and smoke weed or smoke cigarettes. I'm just going by the reports, of course, from the Chinese and the French. You can check out these articles yourself. I'm only bringing it up because we're learning so much, and this is another example of conflicting reports. And my point is, no one knows who to truly believe anymore, and everyone is sort of sick of it all by now.
That's true. You get an expert on both sides, and which expert do you listen to? So.
That's the problem.
Well, I got a hard time listening to anything the Chinese say at this point because I have lost all faith in them.
You're
really
right.
have. And I don't think I'm alone. I don't think I'm alone. I think a lot of people are pissed off at the Chinese government.
Right.
I think, yeah, well, they lie. First of all, they're communists. So, right there, big FU. And second of all, the fact that they lied to us about the numbers and how dangerous this really was, I feel that they are just not to be trusted at this point at all. I really feel that they are liars. The government, that is.
The CCP.
The CCP government, yes. But what do I know? What do I know?
We're just assuming here.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Mr. Duke, what do you think, sir?
Oh, wow. That's a hornet's nest. I don't really know. I don't know. I'm serious on that. I really don't know what to think half the time when it comes to that. I'm just, I get frustrated because I'll read all these. I'll go to any online media source I can find, and everybody's got an expert they're quoting, and they're all contradicting one another. So, and that just leads to frustration. So,
it really does.
I don't know what to think. And half the time I think to hell with it. I'm just going to go have a good time. And then I worry, or what if I'll die? What if that's my last good time? So I don't know.
And
I don't want to go out. I think one of the worst ways to die is from a disease, in my opinion. Other people might disagree, but I think the worst way to die for me would be a disease. I'd rather go out, in a plane crash or a robbery or
That's
something
right.
like that. So,
yeah, I'm with you on
God.
that. I'm with you on that. This is kind of a weak way to die. If you die from COVID-19, that's kind of weak.
yeah, well, just drug out, long drawn out, and painful. and I
Yeah.
don't want to go that way.
Yeah, I'd rather have a glorious
Wow.
death myself, in battle at least. Something cool.
Yeah,
Torn apart
Something.
by hyenas.
Yeah.
or go to a park and slap a grizzly bear or something.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, dying of a virus, that's
Right on.
a very lame way to go.
You guys are blowing me away, man. I don't want to die like that. I mean, God, yeah, I want to go into the jungle and get attacked by lions. Yes.
The people I feel
Now
the
there's
worst
an
for,
obituary.
the people I feel the worst for are those who went out on those cruises.
Oh yeah.
I'm not doing that, man.
So,
I'm not going out there to the
Yeah,
deep sea. Fuck that.
Yeah.
that,
Well,
that was-
it seems
that
like
was
for the
nasty.
last couple of decades, you always hear of cruise ships getting strange, mysterious illnesses, and I just don't go because of that.
Exactly.
See,
You're
it's
smart.
like a floating petri dish.
Amen. See, you're a smart man, Daniel. You're not taking any chances. I'm right there with you. No cruises for me. I would just turn them down every time if I ever got invited. Screw that.
That's how I am.
You're a wise man, Daniel. So of course, let's jump right into your background here, my friend. How old were you, by the way, when you first discovered that you had some sort of relationship to Jesse James, the outlaw himself?
Well, I was a kid when I heard it. You go into family get-togethers on holidays and stuff. I would hear the story, but it was always a quick mention. And when you asked for more details, a lot of the adults didn't want. They would just change the subject. But and I think I always thought the main reason for that is they didn't want their kids growing up being wild as hell and doing something stupid. And the kind of kid I was, I would have done something stupid and regretted it. So it's best they. But over the years, well, when I was in college, I just got out of college. I was working in Houston, and my mother had a lot more free time on her hand, and she wanted to. She got into researching. She wanted to know once and for all, was history, accepted traditional history telling the truth, or was our family story the truth? And she started researching, getting into it, getting family photos, and found out that our story we had more evidence than traditional history. And I remember she called me. I was at work in Houston, and she called me one day, and I thought, this is wild. And I didn't really think that much of it because I grew up hearing those stories. But when I came up here, took a trip, came back home, and she showed me the evidence. And then over the years, I ended up leaving Houston, came back to Central Texas and helped her research. My sister Teresa and I helped her research for over 20 years. And in that time, she wrote 3 books, and the mountain of evidence she had was just amazing. It just blew their story out of the water. And but anyway, to answer your question, I tend to ramble on sometimes. I was about 28 when the big revelations started coming in.
And you can ramble on. It's okay.
Okay.
We appreciate that here.
All right. She started out. We had all the oral tradition, the family stories, and then one of the big pieces of evidence, the first one that really lit a fire under her, was a treasure map that had been passed down through the family.
Mm.
And my great aunt had passed a treasure map from Jesse, my great great grandfather. He had the original treasure map when he was being buried in 1943. During his funeral, half his children stayed back at the house digging up his yard looking for gold and silver.
My.
Yeah, and one of his sons had made a copy of the map, and that's the map we have. We have the copy that is one of his sons had made, and that got passed down to us. And trying to figure that out over the years, I kept going back to that. After I would come to a brick wall in any of the genealogical research, I'd always go back to that treasure map and try to figure that out. And it ended up being a whole separate story unto itself. But she ended up getting family photographs. She took several of our photographs of my great great grandfather and his immediate family members to the Texas Department of Public Safety Forensics Lab, and that's like our state police. They verified that our photos matched the traditionally accepted photos of Jesse James, And then she went to the Austin Police Department Forensic Photo Lab. They verified it. And a third group was called Visionics, and they were world leaders in facial recognition technology at the time. Then they got bought out by another company, but they also verified that our photos matched, and that gave us a lot of clout. And my mother kept researching, we kept helping her, and it just went from there. We ended up getting a mountain of evidence, not only about the photos and through state and federal like census records and other pieces of evidence, but also the 1995 exhumation that they did in Kearney, Missouri. They claimed they were going to prove once and for all that Jesse James died as history stated. And we, no pun intended, but my mother shot holes through their story. It seemed like every aspect of their story was disproven very easily with a little research. And it just kind of went from there. After she did that, she wrote her second book. That's when the death threats started. People were sending death threats to her and my sister and I, and she contacted the FBI, and fortunately they took care of it and put a stop to the death threats.
Jesus.
Why were they giving you death threats?
Right.
I've always wondered, and I think I always say only they can answer that, but I think it dealt more with money and maybe their egos. Some of them, I think it was more of an ego involved. They always said that they were the descendants, and somebody challenges that, and I think it hurts their ego, or maybe even their self-identity. I don't know. But I think money was the biggest part of it.
Understood. I was just about to ask you, have you or your mother been threatened? And I got the answer there, and I'm not entirely surprised by that at all. It seems like anyone who gets too close to these sort of things winds up getting threatened and maybe even whacked.
Yeah. And
now, Mr. Duke, can you verify for us and the listeners, where was Jesse James? Where was he? In Texas?
He was born and raised in Missouri, and during the Civil War, he fought. That's where his name was made. During the Civil War, he rode with the guerrillas, Quantrill's guerrillas, and at the end of the war, like most normal Confederate soldiers were pardoned. They were granted amnesty, but the guerrillas weren't. And he was a guerrilla, so they were hunted down. And if you've ever seen the movie The Outlaw Josie Wells, that's fairly accurate on how they were treated after the war. They were hunted down and killed, and if they were caught, they would get a quick trial and get hung after that. And Jesse tried to turn himself in. Oh, go ahead.
Can you explain to us though what is it, a guerrilla?
Yeah, they were. Well, see, Jesse was 14 years old. He was working on his farm. He was too young to fight in the war, and Kansas Jayhawkers had been raiding his part of Missouri for like 10 years before the war actually started. And a lot of people had been murdered, like Cole Younger, the Younger brothers. Their father, they were all a Union family until Union-backed guerrillas from Kansas robbed and murdered their father, and that changed their mind. It wasn't so much with them about politics, it was more about getting revenge for the people who killed their family members. Jesse was 14, he was working on his farm, and some Union-backed guerrillas rode onto the farm. They strapped him to a plow and beat him severely. Then they strapped his mother to a tree and whipped her. There's a lot different accounts on what they actually did to his mother, but she was pregnant. They pushed her around. It said they whipped her with a horse whip, and then they hung his stepfather until he wasn't dead, but he had severe brain damage after that. So he just wanted revenge, and I'm trying to remember what your original question was on that.
I was just trying to understand what the guerrilla was, a Union guerrilla.
Yeah, so he wanted revenge. He was too young to fight for the Confederacy, but Quantrill's guerrillas were more than happy to take him in. It was just a guerrilla group, a Confederate. It was a group of guerrillas who sided with the Confederacy. There were also guerrillas who sided with the North, but apparently Quantrill's guerrillas were very feared and very good at what they did, which was just basically killing people. and they rode around looking for their enemies and killed everyone they could find.
That's right.
They wrote what I think one of their most infamous acts was when they burned the city of Lawrence, Kansas. They killed every male of fighting age. They didn't kill the women and children. They just killed the men, and then they set the stores on fire. And that was probably their most infamous act.
So the guerrillas get their name from what? Guerrilla warfare?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay. Gotcha.
And he had tried to turn himself in. Jesse had, after the Civil War had ended officially, and when he was riding into, I think it was Lexington, there was a Union picket, and they just opened fire on him and shot him. He got a bullet through his lung. Somehow he got away and lived. And he'd been shot through the same lung twice, and each time he somehow made it. But
Wow.
he tried to turn himself in. They shot him, and it was pretty clear he was branded an outlaw. He was going to be killed if they caught him. So he kind of lived up. He and his others in his group decided to, if they were going to be branded outlaws, they didn't really have much of a choice. So they decided to become outlaws.
And what was their primary crimes? Was it bank robbing? I'm assuming looting.
Yeah, bank robbings. They robbed banks, trains, and stagecoaches, and a couple of times they robbed steamboats.
It's pretty wild. Bank robbers, for some reason, bank robbers seem to get a lot of respect in prison.
Yeah, I've always
Everyone loves
wondered
them.
about that.
Yeah, the inmates love hearing about that.
Yeah, it's like they're fighting the man.
Yeah,
kind of
I
thing.
think so. It's like a romantic idea for them.
Yep, Bonnie and Clyde and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that was the big thing back then. I mean, banks, trains. What else did you have? You couldn't steal computers and 74-inch screen TVs.
Yeah.
That's true.
Very interesting.
And by the way, you're saying in your book, Jesse James faked his death.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Okay. It was said, traditional history states that Jesse, after they attempted to rob a bank in Northfield, Minnesota, and it went horribly wrong for them. And the younger brothers ended up in prison and shot up. Some of them died. Jesse and Frank were said to have gotten away. We don't believe that Jesse was even at that robbery. He had a cousin named Wood Height, and Wood Height bore a strong resemblance to Jesse, and that's a historical fact. Both sides agree to that. We believe that it was Wood Height in Northfield, Minnesota, and Jesse was in Texas. They worked a lot like they did. Most of their tactics they learned during their guerrilla days, all the different guerrilla warfare tactics, and they would split up and hit 2 or 3 places at the same time. And news reports, it kept people confused as well, including the law. You'd have a report of Jesse robbing a bank in, 100 miles away or two or three banks, several hundred miles away at the same time on the same day. And people didn't know what to believe. And I think what they were doing was splitting up. And that's what I think happened in Northfield, Minnesota. But it went horribly wrong. Most of the gang had got wiped out or in prison. So he needed to rebuild his gang. It's said that Bob and Charlie Ford joined his new gang, and they ended up getting an offer from the governor to basically a reward to bring him in dead or alive. And it was easier to kill him than to bring him in alive, so they shot him in the back of the head. But all the details around that story, nothing adds up. Well, like if you've ever been to the house where he was shot, they said that Jesse had to get up on a chair, and he was dusting a picture on the wall, and they shot him in the back of the head with a .44. And if you go to the house, the ceiling is only like 7 foot high. And it's a very low ceiling. So why, he was according to history, he was around 5'8" to 5'9". I don't think he would have needed to get on a ceiling to dust a chair with a feather duster. I mean, a painting if he was 5'8" or 5'9", and the ceiling was only 7 foot up, high. So all he would have had to have done was stretch out his arm and dust the photo or the picture.
my question is, why would a gunslinger have to dust a painting anyway?
Exactly. And that's true. His wife was at home, but and they said that he took his guns off and turned his back on the two new gang members, knowing how paranoid and suspicious he was of people. That didn't add up. But the other thing was, they in that house they have a hole in the wall where they said the bullet exited his head and went through the wall. But when they exhumed the body, there was supposedly no exit wound. And during the coroner's inquest at the time, there was no exit wound. There was a New Mexico State Police firearms expert, and she testified that, well, she recreated the alleged assassination and said there's no way they could have done that with a 44 without blowing his entire face off at point blank range.
Yeah, 44 would do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and then at the coroner's inquest, well, first of all, before the inquest, they called his mother. They went and got his mother a few miles south of St. Joseph, Missouri, where that happened, and they got her to identify the body. She walked in, looked at it, and said, "Gentlemen, you're mistaken. That is not my son." Then somebody grabbed her by the arm and walked outside with her. She came back in shortly, bawling and cursing all the people who killed her poor son, and claimed it was her son. So she contradicted herself right there, and she was known in those days to have said he was dead several times. So, and there were even news reports like in the Galveston News talking about how she wasn't a reliable witness when it came to claiming her son was dead. I mean, she was trying to help him get away herself. But at the inquest, they examined his wife, questioned his alleged wife, which was also supposed to have been his first cousin. Her name was Z. Mims. She didn't know his age. She was married to him for years, had 2 children with him allegedly, but she didn't know his age. She didn't know which finger on which hand was said to have been missing, but she could recall every piece of jewelry she had down to fine detail. It was she knew all her jewelry, but she didn't know anything about the guy she was supposed to have been married to for years and had 2 children with. It just didn't add up. And then the story gets deeper. If you fast forward to 1995, the exhumation where they wanted to prove once and for all that history was correct and that he died as they had reported, they dug him up. They dug the entire body up. They made a show of it. They couldn't find DNA evidence. There's a lawyer who was the Clay County commissioner. He's currently a lawyer, but the Clay County commissioner at the time, Stephen Caruso, is quoted as saying that the whole thing was a tawdry sideshow. He wasn't the hair and the teeth that they tested for DNA were he was ordered to turn over the hair and the teeth. They had supposedly a sample of one of his teeth and some of his hair, and he was in possession of the hair and the teeth. They ordered him to turn it over. He didn't agree with how it was being conducted, and he pulled the hair out of his friend's head, John Hartman, who was the Clay County Parks director, and submitted John Hartman's hair as Jesse's hair. And he said, "I guarantee the tooth was the same. Basically, the tooth was the same thing. He had gotten a tooth and turned that in." They tested it at Penn State University and several other places and claimed that it coincided with everything they knew about Jesse. Therefore, it was highly likely it was Jesse. And it wasn't even, they had no idea they were testing John Hartman's tooth or hair and another tooth. And when you research the origin of the teeth, he was originally buried at the James farm. And then in 1902, they allegedly exhumed Jesse and buried him in the Kearney, Missouri cemetery. The tooth that they tested was retrieved from the James farm yard in 1978 and put in a Tupperware bowl. And they kept it in a Tupperware bowl for years. And the curator of the museum was said to have handed out parts of bones and other teeth to close friends and relatives. So there's a lot of potential for cross-contamination right there. Then the tooth, they never were big on mentioning the fact that when they did dig up that tooth in 1978, it was from the front yard of a farm, and they'd also found hog's teeth, dog's teeth, and some other animal bones. So who's to say the tooth they had was even human?
Right.
Ugh, that's confusing.
It really goes deep there.
There's no chain of custody, nothing about it. The guy who headed the exhumation was Dr. James Stars. He's an attorney and he's a legal professor. He has nothing to do with forensics other than that's his hobby. And you'd think with something of that importance, you'd hire a guy or a woman who was specialized in that field, a forensic anthropologist or somebody along those lines, and not some law professor from George Washington University.
And you also mentioned in your book that Jesse lived out his final years under the name of James L. Courtney.
Yeah. They were related to and lived nearby when he was growing up in Missouri, the Courtney family. In fact, one of the sheriffs, I think it was in Ray County, it was south of Clay County, his name was James W. Courtney, and he had allegedly been involved in killing one of the Pinkerton agents who had been trying to find Jesse and his family. And the Pinkerton agent was murdered, found dead the next day. And shortly after that, it was about a year later, is when the Pinkertons threw a bomb in the James farm, and it blew his mother's arm off and killed his half-brother.
Oh, my.
How convenient.
Yeah. It got real rough.
Good old times, boy. Good old times.
It got really rough.
Imagine living in the time of Jesse James. I mean, gosh, your life must have been shortened dramatically if you were living the life of a gunslinger.
Yeah.
Although somehow, I do know that if I had grown up in that time, I would probably have been a gunslinger myself.
You would have been robbing banks, Mike.
It's just too cool, I mean, how can you pass up an opportunity like that? You guys want to have an interesting way to die? You don't want to die of coronavirus? Pick up a gun and rob a damn bank. Then you'll know it.
No, you're really living after that, for sure. Robbing banks and robbing trains.
If you don't live a happy life with all the money that you steal, you might get shot. Who knows?
That's true.
That's a very interesting obituary. Something to tell the grandkids.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be nice on a headstone. He was known for drinking beer, hopping trains, robbing banks. Good times. I mean, that's the way to live.
Yeah.
So, so how many generations are we talking here, Mr. Duke? How far back does he go? Like grandfather, great grandfather, great great grandfather.
He was my great great grandfather.
Great great grandfather. So that's only like what, 2, 3 great great grandfathers. So that was 3 generations, right?
Let's see. It's me, my mother, my grandfather, great grandmother. That would be 5 generations, 4 or 5 generations.
5 generations. Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Now, I got to ask you a question here. How do you feel knowing that Jesse James was an outlaw and killed people? How does that make you feel?
I'm just kind of neutral on it. In a way, I can see how they were forced into it, and they were not by no means angels. I mean, a lot of people paint them out to be, heroes of the people, fighting for the man, that kind of thing, or fighting for the regular men against the man. And a lot of people painted it out that he was fighting the evil railroad tycoons and stuff like that. And he may have been. I'm sure they had a grudge against them, but there was a lot more to the robberies, in my opinion, than just going out and getting money for their. It wasn't for their own. I don't believe it was for their own material gain. I think they got a bad deal at the end of the war. They may have deserved it. They may not. They weren't angels, but at the same time, I think they got a bad deal. And I know when he came to Texas, he was also a Freemason. I don't know when he became a Freemason. If he became one when he got to Texas, or if he was already one before he came to Texas. But he came here in 1871, about 11 years before the faked death in 1882.
Right.
And he married the daughter of a former Texas Ranger who was Thomas Hudson Barron, and so he kind of, and it was also interesting. People think, wait, he married a Texas Ranger's daughter. Back in those days, the Texas Rangers, a lot of those guys kind of skipped back, and they crossed the line quite a bit between outlaw and lawman. And they were rough people. They were chasing rough people, and a lot of Texas Rangers were known to have played both sides.
Right.
I think Thomas Barron was a good man, but he's also very mysterious, and there's a lot of things I'd love to know about him that I haven't been able to find yet. But he married the Texas Ranger's daughter and tried to live a peaceable life. But he also had a lot of gold. We've got his diary from 1872 to 1876, and there's mention in his diary of how he would exchange gold for cash. People would come to him with cash or with gold, and he would take their gold and give them cash in exchange, almost like a farmer / banker, like an underground banker in a way. And it was really interesting.
It sounds like it. And of course, I got to ask, as James L. Courtney, he lived his remaining years. And of course, I'm wondering, did he really live up to 97?
Yes.
God damn.
It was an old age.
That was a long time.
Yeah, we've got one photo. It's my favorite photo of him. He's in a wheelchair with his daughter and his wife. His wife at the time was younger than his daughter, and it was his third wife. And I can't remember how old he was when he married her, but she was about 40 years younger than him. But anyway, yeah.
Good Lord, Mike.
He's sitting in a wheelchair with a beer in one hand and a rifle in the other.
Oh my!
And it's a cool photo.
It really is.
I gotta just make one mention.
Go
I
ahead.
have my second oldest brother has been doing family research. Oh goodness, probably for the last 30 or 40 years now. Probably close to 40 years. He's written about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 or 6 books on our family. Not that they were published. But I got to tell you, you mentioned the photograph of him in a wheelchair with what was it, a shotgun or a rifle?
It was a rifle.
I have a photograph of my great grandfather who had come over from Italy, great grandfather and grandmother. And there's a photograph of them, black and white photograph, very old photograph. And my great grandfather is sitting in the chair. He looks insane. He really looks like he's out of his mind. Like he's leaning towards you in the photograph, his eyes bulging white with this mean grin on his face. And then grandma is standing in the back with a shotgun and a pipe in her mouth.
Oh wow!
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my family photograph.
That's a nice photograph.
That's a nice photo.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
I love those old photos, and they were a completely different. That generation, I always hear old guys talk about how their father's generation was a tough generation. If you talk to them, they said the same about their fathers, and it just makes me wonder how tough things must have been compared to the way they are now.
Oh my goodness! Could you imagine any of the younger snowflakes in this country living life of a farmer? Or just living out in the field? These kids would have died in a day.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I got to use a rake or a hoe. What am I supposed to do? How do I control these ox and the plow? What do I do? Oh, give me a safe space. I don't know what to do. They would have died in a day. These snowflakes today have no idea how these people who came to America busted their humps.
Yeah,
they were wild back then.
Build their own houses, raise their own food, raise their own livestock, crops. Everything was done by their own hands. And today, you got kids coming out of college going, "Oh, well, I can't get a job as a lawyer, so maybe I'll beg the government for money to deserve it."
Back then, if you got a blister in those days, it could get infected and you would die. I mean, it's hard to believe for a lot of people, but you could get a scratch, a cut, a blister from hard work, and the next day it's infected, and shortly after you die from a blister.
That's right.
That's right, or you die of dysentery.
Yeah.
Another beautiful way to go out.
Yeah.
Go out shitting yourself. I mean, it's a great time. That's the way to die. Not robbing banks, just dying in a puddle of your own excrement.
Well, yeah, you hear of people. I've always heard of you hear on the news somebody died in a gunfight, and versus you take that, and I used to think about it. I would think, okay, you're dying in a gunfight. There's a few probably painful thuds, and then that's it. Versus dying from dysentery.
Oh, that's terrible.
I would much rather choose the gunfight.
Same here.
Well, I don't know, man.
You got nothing for that, right?
I'm sure it's a lot bloodier and more violent, but at the same time, it's a lot. In my opinion, it seems much more merciful than going out by dysentery.
Amen.
Depending where they shoot you, yeah. I mean, if they get you a headshot, yeah. If they blow your whole body apart on the lower extremities, then you still have a chance of living.
That's true.
By the
that
way,
would be the tough part.
I just had a random question for both of you, really quickly here. This is on a complete side note. Kim Jong-un apparently faked his death recently. What exactly are your thoughts on that sort of thing, Daniel?
I've wondered about that. I don't know if it's him, if it's a look-alike. I don't know. I've seen all these reports, and people just don't know. And I thought we've got the best, I guess, the best spy agencies in the world, and if they don't know, it really makes me wonder. And there's no telling. It's a cool story, and I've been trying to follow it, but I don't know what to think.
It's pretty odd. Allegedly, he wanted to see who were the double agents in his camp, who was loyal and who was a plant. And this is something that was rumored as well as other body doubles. And we've seen that going on with different political figures throughout the years, especially in Mexico and other countries as such. You see that sort of thing going on.
Yeah.
And that should be expected, however.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and then they showed his sister. His sister, if he dies, she supposedly is going to be the one who takes over. And just looking at her photo, looking at her eyes, she seems like somebody you would not want to mess with.
Great.
A banshee.
Yeah, like she could make him look like a kitten.
So, Mike, what are your thoughts on Kim Jong-un?
Well, frankly, I was hoping he would be dead.
You wish he would be dead?
I can't stand the guy.
Right.
I have a lot of issues. I have a lot of issues with Korea. My father fought in the Korean War. I read about some of the atrocities that they committed to the people. So I have that aside. I have always, and I'll tell you, this is the God's honest truth. I have always dreamed of faking my death.
Really?
I have always dreamed of faking my death. I always wanted to fake it, pack up, and move to Hawaii or some other beautiful place, and just get away from my former life. Don't ask me why. I just had this grand fantasy of starting over, I guess you could say.
Like a clean slate.
Yeah, more or less. Not that my slate is kind of dirty, but just I don't know. I really don't know what the fascination is for me, but I've heard stories. Jim Morrison is alive and well and living under the name of Mojo Rising in France, or Elvis Presley never died and he's living somewhere.
Right.
So you hear these stories and you got to ask yourself, I wonder what it must be like. Even if you're in the witness protection plan, that's like dying.
It is.
Faking your death and starting somewhere else. So it's kind of fascinating to me, and I've always kind of had that sick, twisted fantasy about wanting to fake my death and go away.
That's a real romantic angle to play.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
It's got
fake your
an
death.
adventurous quality to it.
Exactly. You fake your death, you start over, a brand new life.
Yeah.
If it's possible, and in your case, Duke, Mr. Duke, it would be interesting because let's just say you came across the treasure that Jesse James had buried. Now you got all this money. Maybe you can just like fake your death and go away and start a whole new life with that treasure. You know.
I've wondered about that. I often dream buy a yacht, just float around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be nice, except I'm not going out too far in that yacht. I'm staying close to the island.
Don't sail by any cruise ships.
yeah, exactly. I'm staying as close as possible. I mean, these cruise ships. Yeah, Jesus.
Just hug the beaches.
I got to say, Daniel and Mike, you know, these long extended quote unquote vacations, a lot of them end in disaster. Sometimes even the power goes out and you're out there stranded in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. That's probably the worst place you can be on Earth, is stranded far, far away in the middle of nowhere in the ocean. You're surrounded by water. You have no idea what's going to go on. And let's just say you fall in the water and my God, you die either by drowning or by Cthulhu probably drags you in.
Cthulhu.
That's right.
That's so funny. I was thinking about that today, Michael. But you know, you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you, bro, one of my biggest fears is water. I have an extreme phobia of vast
terrible
water. Yeah,
I don't like water that I can't see the bottom. So if I'm in shallow, clear water, that's why I think in the last year, I've loved the idea of going to the Mediterranean, like the Greek islands with the crystal clear water. You can see everything. That doesn't bother me. But if you get out in deep sea and you can't see the bottom, that's when I start getting nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what's down there. Some giant.
That's right. I won't even go into like a lake or a pond because like I'm afraid some snapping turtle is going to rip my toes off.
That's possible too.
I just said the same thing to a lady last night. I was talking to a lady. She was talking about skinny dipping.
Oh.
And I thought, no, not around here. There's too many snapping turtles. So that's a scary thought.
That's true. You don't want.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I feel. And where I live, I mean, every June throughout to August, I'm always rescuing turtles off the road. Some big snapping turtles too. And I pull them off the road so they don't get killed. And I could just imagine like things taking your toe off because they are like out here. I've seen them. They're as big as they could be as big as a tire.
Yeah.
And I no way.
Yeah, I can't even imagine those things latching on to some lips or some nips, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yikes.
Oh, yeah.
What a visual.
Wow.
And they don't let go quick. They hold on for a while.
That's right. They don't let go until something comes off.
Yeah.
I'm good then. No skinny dipping for me out there.
No way.
Or in general, I've never been one to partake in that, to be completely honest with you two gentlemen out there and the listeners out there. I've never done that before.
Skinny dipping?
Yeah.
Don't feel bad. Neither have I.
I don't want to do it.
I've done is in the shower.
Yeah, same here. I'm not really intrigued by that, to be honest with you.
I never thought about it until the lady yesterday had mentioned it, and I've done it twice.
Was that a hint, Daniel? Was that a hint to you?
No, she just mentioned it. I don't know what brought it up. She mentioned it, and I thought, huh.
Well, I think I know what happened.
I didn't say anything, but I thought, wow, I've done that twice.
Daniel,
long ago.
I think I know what's going on there. She's been locked up, during the quarantine, and maybe she wants to experiment with you, Daniel.
Maybe.
You never know. Might as well keep talking to her, Daniel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, save her number.
Now that I think about it, I've actually skinny dipped in a pool, but I won't go in any murky water. I won't.
There you go.
Dipping.
That's better.
The first thing that comes to mind is oh, what the hell's his name from Halloween? Was it? No, Friday the 13th.
There you go.
Jason.
Jason, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good times.
There's something, when you do that, you feel, I guess, more vulnerable than any other point. And it's just too vulnerable, so I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Clothes and a bat or a gun or something, and I'll feel fine.
Yes, sir. And of course, we are coming to not a close, but we are going to go on a break pretty soon here, Daniel. And I thought you're more than welcome to stick around here and join us on the second half of the program. And you could stay longer if you'd like with us here.
Yeah, I'd love to.
No problem. Yeah, we'll go on a little break in a few minutes here. But before we do, I did want to ask you this question before I even forget. What do you make of the television show The Curse of Oak Island?
I like the show. I haven't watched as much of it as I would have liked to. And the whole story about that, I even mentioned it in my first book. There's too much there to discount it. And I think there's a lot of evidence showing that the Templar were there and something was buried there. I just don't know what. I believe it was a lot of the treasures. And I also believe they used that as a staging point when they came over and then spread it out in different areas across the Americas over the decades and centuries.
Interesting theory.
And Mike, any thoughts or opinions on the TV show? Have you got a chance to watch anything of from that series?
I have to admit, Michael, I know you've mentioned it to me, but I have not watched the show.
Yet.
And I'll tell you, the only reason I didn't watch it is because
well, it's hard to.
Every time well, hang on. What I'm trying to say is every time I see the preview for it, it makes me think it's like a construction show. But I don't know. Maybe you can convince me. Yeah, because I see all these big yellow trucks and dump trucks and clouds.
Well, they're digging for the gold. They're searching for that gold. I said they're searching for that gold, Mike. That's what it is.
Okay, so is
they're
that
trying.
The whole show? They're just searching for the gold?
In other words, yes. To a large extent, I would have to say they are pretty much searching for the gold. And I keep thinking they're not going to find treasure, but they might find D.B. Cooper's body. Who knows?
Well, I'll tell you what, brother. I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, give it a watch. Give it a watch.
I'll watch it.
It's not too bad.
And if I like it, I'll get hooked into it. It's on Netflix, right?
Actually, I don't even know if it's on Netflix, to be honest. I don't think so.
Maybe Hulu? I'm not sure either. I haven't seen an episode in quite a while. I've been busy writing, but and all the research.
Maybe it's on history.
I think it was history, but I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Yeah. I think it is history. I think you're right. So if it is, then I can't watch it because I don't have the History Channel. I don't have cable. Nevertheless, if I do come across it, I will try to check it out. If I can stand it, I'll watch it.
Yeah, it's on the History Channel, and I think you can watch it for free. Some episodes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I've seen some episodes, I think, on YouTube or somewhere.
You can watch it there, I think.
Where, but...
Yeah, it's not hard to find. The Curse of Oak Island. And yes, lots of digging. Yeah. Lots and lots of digging. Before we go into...
Do they ever?
Go ahead.
Do they ever find anything?
Well, found a couple of small things, but nothing great big. Nothing big. Just little small things. And then, they get ground penetrating radar. They'll see images of something that looks large down deep, and it's always in a place where it's going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars and a lot of man hours to get to, and then I never find out what was actually down there. That gets frustrating, but I also know hunting for treasure is very frustrating. So
word,
I can imagine.
Very frustrating, and I think the quality of the programming on the History Channel has sort of diminished over time.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, I don't really like most of these shows these days on the History Channel.
Oh, we were talking about this. Yeah, they're all these ice truckers.
I mean, I don't care about swamp people. I mean, what does that have to do with the History Channel?
Yeah, swamp people,
Pawn Stars,
people, duck hunters. I mean, who the hell cares?
That's true. Why do they have swamp people on the History Channel? I guess
don't
they're
know, but I
part
get
of
up,
history.
I,
But
I get upset when I see them having to pull out. They shoot alligators. I don't know. Whatever.
Ice Road Truckers, yeah.
Ice Road Truckers. I haven't even
Or
heard of
Ice
that
Road
one.
Trucker, or whatever the hell the name of that show is. I remember
Yeah.
seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
It's
called Ice
basically
Road Truckers.
guys who have to drive trucks across the ice of, I guess, either far north in Canada for whatever it is that they're getting, either I don't know, wood or something like that. So the thing is, these giant lakes freeze up, and then these truckers are hauling, however many tons of whatever it is they're carrying across these ice. And the thing is, there's no roads. And then they're constantly having blizzards. So what roads are out there, which are carved and on top of ice, if it snows, sometimes the roads disappear and these guys end up flipping their trucks. And so that part I know, but honestly, I don't know if we need to make a whole series about it.
Yeah,
That's
that
true.
could be a new network, the Essential Workers Network. So
Yeah, there you go.
tonight on
Union.
EW.
Yeah, I'm really agreeing with the chat room here tonight. They are on point with the comments. I'm seeing lots of good ones indeed. And lots of them are also wondering what happened to the real History Channel. That's from Vlad right there. I agree. Whatever happened to the History Channel? It used to have history. Now it doesn't have any history. I agree with V, who says History Channel rarely has history on. Of course, and Ancient Aliens as well. You could throw them into the mix.
And the same with MTV. MTV is no longer a music television show.
It hasn't been for many years.
Called MTV.
I know.
What is it? Just celebrity gossip or something?
All real. What do they call it? Real life television shows or reality shows, rather.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
It's all bull crap. Honestly, it's just what a waste of time.
What a waste of airtime.
Yep.
But I think they're getting money somehow, though, Mike. They're still running the TV series for as long as they have now. It's
of course,
10 plus years.
Of course they are. But
wow.
You're talking about MTV, right?
No, this time I'm referring to the TV show Ancient Aliens. I'm just surprised that they've been going for as long as they have. It's like 15 years now, maybe. Well, not 15, maybe less, but it seems that way. Holy hell.
I think it's been at least a decade. I think that came out around 2007, I think.
Oof, it's been that long?
I've never even seen one episode of it. I spent
you're not missing
time
nothing.
researching.
Yeah, you're not really missing much.
Yeah.
It looks nice. It's visually appealing, but that's about it. Lots of many fabrications, lots of exaggerations on that television show, Ancient Aliens. And I have brought it up before to one of the producers during dinner. And that probably wasn't a smart idea. I don't think he appreciated my verbiage there at all. I think he was rather upset hearing me go off on Ancient Aliens and Cowboys and Aliens, the movie that was there, and they were promoting it. That was that was embarrassing.
Well, the funny thing is that this show's been on for how long, and they still haven't found any proof of Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, you got that right. Well, I mean,
right?
the same goes with these TV shows on Bigfoot and ghosts.
I was just going to say the same thing.
There you go. I mean, that's kind of the way these reality TV shows work these days. They go around looking for something, and in the end, they never come to a
conclusion.
A good
it's
conclusion.
Like a constant cliffhanger.
Right.
Yep. It's like 15 episodes.
And nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Every ghost hunting show is, I heard a noise.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
It must be a ghost.
Did you hear that? What was that?
Yeah,
I heard that, man. I heard that.
It's embarrassing. It really is.
Absolutely.
Oof.
Anyway.
Well, Daniel, it's that time to go on a little break here, and definitely stick around and just hang tight. And Mike, hang tight as well. We will be gone for about 5 minutes or so, and when we return, round two is next. Hang tight, everybody.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Have you thought of breaking through? Ain't it part of what you do? Catch a victim while he's dumb, break his larynx with your time, and it's time to get high. Well, this ain't no goddamn dream, it's exactly what it seems. Wake up today just to lay back down and say, I won't be coming back. Let's call it a heart attack. Give me some of that knack. This is just a final payback. They all flipped on me, took my passions, left me be. When I had a place to sit, a goddamn attitude to fit. Talk real smoothly with.
And welcome back, boys and girls, yet again. Here we are, like a big, happy, dysfunctional family. And of course, we were talking to Mr. Daniel J. Duke and also my co-host, Mr. Mike Hideous. Mike, what's going down?
Right.
There you are.
I'm back, buddy.
Very nice. I hope both of you enjoyed that little break. And for those just joining us now, we were talking about Daniel's book, Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure, secret diaries, coded maps, and of course, the Knights of the Golden Circle. And that brings me to another point. I honestly never knew Jesse James was involved with the Knights of the Golden Circle. You know, I had vaguely remembered reading something like that years ago, but not really to that extent with this secret society.
Yeah, it was a long. Well, it's hard to explain sometimes. I'm trying to back up to a good point on that.
Sure.
When I first began researching the treasure stories, it was just, the treasure map that had been handed down through the family. It had codes on it. It was basically, the codes on that map were fairly simple. It was just numbers substituted for letters. And you just figure out which number associates with which letter, and it was fairly easy to figure out. And he would flip it around and do it backwards, forwards, but it was fairly easy to figure out. And but at the same time, I didn't have any topographic marks to go off of. The map that he drew was just basically geometric figures, and in what looked like a face looking through a circle, and then lines of sight going off in different directions, and each had numbers associated with it. And some of that I still haven't figured out, but I did figure out where or how it worked over the years. It wasn't like an overnight revelation. It took years and years of work, and in interviews with people who knew what they were talking about. Jesse was allegedly associated with a group of people called the Knights of the Golden Circle. And they were a Confederate sympathizing secret society who, during the Civil War, their job was to basically burn bridges and slow down movements of Union troops. And I thought, okay, so I've got that. After the Civil War, they supposedly changed their tactics, and it was more for hiding treasure in any way they can, gaining it any way they could, and then hiding it. And so in an attempt to fund a second civil war. And that's the basic story of the Knights of the Golden Circle. Some people claim they go back for centuries before that and exist even today, but that's hard to prove. I mean, they're a secret society to begin with, so it's hard to prove whether they're telling the truth or not, or if it's just a fantasy. But I had that to go by, and there was a treasure template associated with the Knights of the Golden Circle. And I thought, okay, if this is true, all I have to do is find a couple of points, and then I'll know the dimensions and size of the template, the scale of the template. And that took forever. But there was the former Attorney General of the state of Texas, Wagner Carr. He also was part of the Warren Commission that dealt with the assassination of JFK. And it was interesting when he first called. I thought, oh my God, this guy's talking to, why would he call here? He had a deep interest in Jesse James. And he would talk to my mother about it, and then he sent his driver out to show my mother and I where several large catches of gold used to be but were recovered. But she showed us the points they were, and I marked that down on the map. I knew exactly where those were. And then a third man, or a second man named George Roming, he was a 32nd degree Freemason. He when he was 10 years old, he knew my great great grandfather, Jesse, and Jesse had hired him to help him move 700 bars of gold. George was, yeah, he was a World War II vet. He was an old man when I met him, real nice guy. But he thought he was about to die, so he drew out a map for my mother and I. He said he'd kept it a secret. There were two other boys his age back then that helped bury the gold. But he said he knew for a fact they never told anybody, and they both died in World War II. So George was allegedly the only person who knew about this treasure. And he drew the map for us. My mother and I went out to locate the area for him. And it's under a lake, and it's on Fort Hood military base. So there was no way we were going to bother with that.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I
Interesting.
thought, damn, we got back and we told him, and he just kind of gritted his teeth and shook his head in disappointment. But there was nothing we could do about that, But yeah. it gave me that third point that I needed. I laid the template over those areas, and the center of it was on my great great grandfather's property, where I believed one of his treasures used to exist, and it all lined up perfect. And I went from there. I took the template. It was just one template. It had a certain scale. I found out over the years that there were three templates, the same shape but three different sizes. There was a large, medium, and small. They spread out. I spread them out using Google Earth. I used the templates. I spread them out across the state, and then I kept going across much of North America. And the interesting thing about that was they line up with other known treasure locations and areas of historic importance, like the Newport Tower in Rhode Island. It lines up with that. It lines up near the Oak Island treasure, and places like there's a stone, I can't remember the name of the stone, Los Lunas Decalogue stone in New Mexico, which has ancient Hebrew carvings on it, and nobody knows who put them there. Even the Native Americans said that they according to some researchers, Native Americans, when asked, claimed that it's always been there. They don't know who put it there. It was just there when they got there. So I don't know how old the stone is, but it lines up with stuff like that, which makes me think the stone may have, I think it has connections. It's a high possibility that it connects with the treasures. And I think it goes much deeper in trying to figure out. So, I went from that. I thought, okay, KGC. But then I started finding out about these historic spots that it lines up with, and it predates any known existence of the Knights of the Golden Circle, which I call KGC. So I started looking further back. I knew my great great grandfather was a Freemason, and George Roming and Wagner Carr, who had shown us the locations of other treasures, they were both Freemasons. And I thought, well, there's a common denominator there. I'll see if that ties in any way.
Right.
And it ended up leading me back to Francis Bacon, his mentor John Dee. I was trying to make like a family tree and see if of an organization, and I wanted to see if any part of it tied back with the Knights Templar. And it went, I went past them. And if you do like a family tree or of associates, it wasn't really a family tree. It's just people who were associated with each other, teachers, students, mentors. Like Francis Bacon's mentor was John Dee, famous alchemist, and he was the original 007, some say. He tied in with different people back through history to famous Jewish rabbis. And from there, I went to there was a famous Jewish rabbi by the name of Rashi, and he was the favored court guest of the Knights Templar, one of the founders of the Knights Templar. And that's cutting the story very short, but in a nutshell, that's how I tied it back with the Knights Templar.
Understood.
And of course, the legends of them and their associations with the gold from the Temple of Solomon.
Right, exactly. And in your book, like you said, you mentioned Francis Bacon and John Dee. Those two names I did not expect to come across in this book, nor the Kabbalah.
Yeah,
No.
it blew me away when I discovered that. I came across that. I thought, oh my God, this just keeps getting deeper and deeper. And there's a million rabbit holes you can go off on the side of this story. It just keeps, it's like multiple spider webs overlapping one another. And there's just every string you touch activates several other strings nearby. And it just keeps going. It's a huge story. And my biggest fear was that I wouldn't do it justice. So, and
Yeah.
there's a lot more research to be done.
For those of you who don't know, John Dee was a big-time occultist back in I believe, the 16 or 1500s, one or the other.
Mhm.
And he was very much involved in the Enoch magic, Enochian magic.
Enochian magic, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple books on him.
Yeah, so it was interesting to read
So,
this
yeah,
book out of nowhere, Mike. It's just, it randomly comes up in the book, and I was just taken back. And then, of course, I see the Tree of Life. I didn't
Yeah,
expect to
yeah.
see that either.
From the Kabbalah.
Right.
From the Kabbalah, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I knew everything they did had different meanings behind it. Like even the distances in the scale of the template. And each template had its own meanings and symbolism behind it. It basically, a lot of it comes down to, the male and female symbols, Venus, Jupiter, Mars. One of the scales is the square of the number of years it takes for the precession of the equinoxes. And it just keeps going. It gets extremely deep, and it ties in with a lot of Kabbalistic and Jewish mysticism. So, and there's also occult Kabbalah and Christian Kabbalah mixed in with it. It just,
Wow.
it's amazing. When I came across the Tree of Life template, that was an accident when I stumbled across that, but I'd heard of the Bruton Parish Vault in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I just out of curiosity, I wanted to see how far it was from Victoria Peak,
I see.
where a large treasure. I mean, the treasure at Victoria Peak was even mentioned in the Watergate hearings back in the 70s.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. So Nixon knew about it. LBJ knew about it. LBJ is, and this is just rumor. I have no facts to back that up. It's just rumored that he had a great deal to do with the treasures and even took some for himself. That's just a rumor, but things like that kind of spurred me on towards researching it deeper. And I mean, the secretary of, what was that? The attorney general for the state of New Mexico had been quoted. He knew about the treasures of Victoria Peak, and it just went on up to the White House. I wanted to just, and the distances between points, like the distance from Victoria Peak, New Mexico, to the Bruton Parish Vault in Williamsburg, Virginia, was 1,715 miles. And the number 1715 ties in greatly with not only different distances around Williamsburg involving the treasure there, but it also ties in with Kabbalistic beliefs and gematria and different aspects of Jewish mysticism.
It gets pretty wild, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets deep.
And I gotta ask, how did all this come up? I mean, like, how did you find yourself looking into things? I mean, maybe I missed it, but how did you find yourself doing research on Jesse James to all these other occultists and religious magic and all that stuff? I mean, is it all from the map trying to find the treasure?
Yeah, well, the stuff about Jesse James came from the oral family history, and my mother and the rest, my sister and I, always wanted to find the truth about that, just about Jesse. Did he fake his death and live to an old age here in Texas?
Right.
Or was the traditional historical version correct? We wanted to know which version was correct, and we were satisfied after all we'd found over the years that our family story was true. And we've got more evidence than they have on that. But the treasure parts, we knew he buried treasure. And like any Old West outlaw, there's always treasure tales. You know, they make for nothing more than
A good
fun
story.
campfire tales.
Correct.
But this one had legs, and then talking to George Roming, and then the Attorney General of the state of Texas talking about the treasures, and had his drivers show us where two very large catches were recovered. I thought, there's a lot more to this story, and that's what got me into the treasure part of it, including the map that was handed down from the family. That was the beginning of it, and I thought at the beginning, I thought at the most it might be a saddlebag with a couple of coins in it, and it just grew from there into a lot more than I'd ever dreamed of. But tying in Kabbalah and the Templar and all that with Jesse James came from, well, like the KGC. I mentioned the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Sure.
It is said that Jesse was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle, which wouldn't shock me. He was a Confederate guerrilla. The KGC were Confederate like spies, and also supposedly recruited a lot of the guerrillas to do work, according to that legend. Then it's also said that Albert Pike, the famous 33rd degree Freemason,
Albert Pike, right?
And he was said to have been a member of the KGC. So I thought, okay, I'll read up. I started reading Morals and Dogma and other writings of Albert Pike, and that's when I came across a lot of the references to Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and other forms of mysticism. It ended up, some of the stuff I'd read on that years later, it rang a bell when I would come across something that looked interesting, and this certain numbers or angles, the numbers of the angles and different things would they kept kind of popping out, like the number 33, for example. That was the English gematria for the name Francis Bacon. It also dealt with, it's a big number in Masonry, and it just led, all of that led me right down the path to researching Jewish Kabbalah, in addition to discovering an organizational tree of who all was involved in this. I wanted to trace it back to, I wanted to know who did this, why they did it, and how far back it went. And I believe I found all my answers.
Wow.
Oy vey.
How long have you been doing this? How long have you been doing this, Daniel?
Over 20 years now.
20 years. Wow.
Wow.
Long time. And Daniel, would it be safe to say you are into the occult?
I guess it could be. I'm a researcher of it. I don't take my own beliefs are different. That's a good question. I go to church. I was raised that way, but at the same time, there are a lot of different beliefs out there that make sense.
Sure.
When I started reading Kabbalistic beliefs, for example, Christian Christian Kabbalah, Jewish Kabbalah, and even some of the occult Kabbalah, there's a lot to that a lot of people just blow off. Oh, they put blinders on and they don't want to look at it. But there's a lot there that seems to mesh well with other beliefs, if that makes any sense.
It does. I understand.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Well,
let's not forget that paganism was prior. In fact, a lot of it was prior to all religions.
Yeah, predates a lot.
Judaism did have its feet tied in Kabbalistic magic and mysticism as well, but. Yeah. It's good. I mean, look, it's not to say that you're into anything that's occult. If you're a Christian going to church, I get it. But the fascination with the occult, it's very easy to get into. I've been studying the occult since 2007.
Right.
And I am absolutely fascinated by it. The history of it is, it's astonishing. Like some of the things that you read about are just crazy. So yeah, I can understand where you're coming from when you say you're interested in it, but not necessarily part of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a practitioner, but sure. I do enjoy researching it. And just the mental stimulus you get from some of that. It's very
it's intriguing.
If you keep an open mind, try to keep an open mind, take the blinders off, and just go where it leads. And it's very intriguing.
It really is.
Not just Christian occult and Jewish Kabbalah, but also Sufi mysticism and different other aspects or other mystic traditions from the Middle East are very interesting.
And going back to the Knights,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead,
Michael. I
Jump
was
in there.
going to say that's pretty much where magic started in the Middle East, from the even from, I believe, from before the Egyptians. So yeah, the Middle East is kind of like where magic started.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Absolutely.
And,
I've been tied into it for years.
Yeah, and I knew after I wrote the book, I thought, God, if anybody at the church reads this, I'm going to be burned at the stake. But if people,
now I really want to read it.
Yeah,
That's a good book.
But it opened my eyes on a lot of just the research into the different belief systems was very eye opening to me. It's enlightening in a way, if that makes any sense. And also Greek mythology. There's a lot of symbolism from Greek mythology, and the Romans switched some of the names around, but Greek and Roman mythology tie in with this story as well. Like the constellation Lyra, from what was that? Cassini's celestial globe of 1792.
Yes.
That globe was highly used in the layout of some of parts of the templates that I discovered, like the Tree of Life template and others. And I think, like around Victoria Peak, for example, it's alleged that one of the documents found in that treasure cache was a translation from the 1700s of a letter from Pope Pius III. I think I've got the right pope. He only reigned for about a month, and he had known in the 1500s about the seven cities of gold, the Cibola, and it was a very cryptic letter that he had written, and someone had translated it in the 1700s, and that translated letter was found among the treasures in Victoria Peak in New Mexico. It gets real deep and real strange in some areas, but it's always fascinating to me.
Oh, it is fascinating for sure. And do you think it's true what they say about the Knights Templar, that they were in possession of the Holy Grail?
I don't discount it. I think they had a lot of, they were a poor group of soldiers, a small poor group of knights or monastic, actually. Yeah, monastic warriors, and it went from that into a global powerhouse. I mean, some of the world's first bankers, or the first international banking system we know. So
that's right.
They stumbled across something. I don't know if it was knowledge, and that's another. That brings up the question also about the Grail. There's a lot of controversy over what the Grail actually is. Some say it was the bloodline of Jesus Christ. Others say it was sacred knowledge. Maybe it's all of the above, or I have no definitive definition of what the Grail is, but I think they could very well be in possession of it, whatever it is.
Yeah, very true.
If I may,
jump in there.
If I may, real quick, Mr. Duke, we Michael and I interviewed the Grand Poobah of the Knights Templar, I guess about a month ago or so, and as we asked him some of the similar questions that we just talked to you about, in reference to the Holy Grail and the treasure and all that jazz. It was kind of funny as he gave us these answers, but they weren't really answers. And in fact, a lot of times he would say, just use your mind. Think about it. Just use your mind and you'll come up with the answer. And I mean, I've read so many books on the Knights Templar, and I'm fascinated by the whole thing. But at the same time, here we are interviewing the Grand Poobah, and he's given us these strange answers that we can't even figure out. But he said, oh, yeah, you're on the right track. Yeah, just use your mind. Use your mind.
Yeah, Mike is referring to William F. Mann, by the way, who you mentioned, by the way, Daniel.
He's in Canada.
Yeah, he's Canadian.
Yep. The Templar Grand Master is Timothy Hogan, and I can't remember what. I've heard. I know of William Mann, and I've seen his title. Both William Mann and Timothy Hogan had written great reviews of my book. Yeah, it was Timothy Hogan, for example, said that he mentioned, if you want, I can read the first paragraph of his endorsement for my book.
Do it.
All right, he said, let's see.
Go ahead.
Let me find that real quick.
Yeah,
I
don't
was
worry.
looking at the wrong page. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
That's all right. That's all right.
I have a bad habit of doing that. There's a million different things I could say on this. But anyway, he said, well, like he said, Daniel J. Duke has successfully cracked open part of the mystery surrounding the Templar treasure from Jerusalem that had been moved to the Americas to help establish a free nation. And then he goes on to mention my book says it goes beyond just theorizing that treasure was moved to the Americas, and in fact demonstrates the connections and methods utilized to hide certain treasures. And when I found out, I didn't know he was going to write an endorsement for my book. The publisher had sent me that, and that just made my day, made my year. Actually, made several decades. So it's like a great. I mean, who better to have verifying the validity of my work than the Grand Master of the Templar himself, which that was amazing.
Absolutely.
That's very true.
Fantastic. Wow. What an honor.
Oh, yes. And of course, Daniel, we are coming to a close here with you on this lovely interview. But of course, I want to leave you with the final word before we part ways with you, Daniel. It's been a great time. I hope you had fun.
I had a great time.
Very nice. Mike, do you have any remaining questions for our guest here?
What are some of the other, real quick, what are some of the other books that you've written, Mr. Duke?
Well, the first one was Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure, and that came out last July. And I've got the second one that I co-authored with my sister. It's slated for release on June 9th, and this coming June. And that one is titled The Mysterious Life and Faked Death of Jesse James.
Wow, interesting. Okay, great. And are you published or are you self-published?
Published. Both books are published through Inner Traditions. That's my publisher. They're out of Vermont, and they're traditionally published, but they're available. You can find the books anywhere, basically anywhere around the world. They're on Amazon in all the different countries and bookstores everywhere. Barnes and Noble.
Good luck with them, sir. I wish you lots of luck, and it was a fascinating night speaking with you tonight.
Thanks. I had a great time.
Very nice. I'm glad
have to have you back.
Yes,
right, Michael?
I would be happy to be back.
For sure. Well, it's always a honor and pleasure to have you here with us, my friend, and we will definitely do this again in the near future. We will speak to you soon, buddy.
Thanks. I look forward to it.
No problem. Take care.
Have a good night, Mr. Duke.
You too, both of y'all.
For sure. Mahalo.
All right.
And there he goes, boys and girls, Mr. Daniel J. Duke. And no, the show's not over just yet, by the way, for those that were wondering in the chat. I just didn't want to take up too much of his time anymore. He had agreed for a show not that long, Mike, so, I'm very fortunate that we had him on here this long.
Yeah, nice guy. I really enjoyed that. He was, and I didn't expect the conversation to turn the way it did, and but obviously his book contains that information about the occult and the Knights Templar. So, quite fascinating. I really would like to get the book. And
it came out of nowhere, by the way, Mike. When I was reading it, I didn't expect some chapters to be that way. Once I got into the book, as soon as we got towards the middle of the book, it changed on me there, and I thought, we're jumping into the occult world here.
Interesting.
Yeah, I liked it, though.
Interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It was a pretty good book, I thought.
Nice.
Oh, yes.
And unfortunately, he's never found the treasure, which that's got to be a bummer,
Or maybe he hasn't even searched for the treasure. And Daniel Duke is actually in the chat room. Yes, thank him, boys and girls. Give him a very warm applaud for the great job he did here tonight. And I think we might even have a sound drop for him that we should have played, Mike, but I screwed up. I really did.
What's that?
There we go.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's right. It was a fun time. So thank you very much, Mr. Duke, for hanging out with us here. And yes, good times. And of course, we will return tomorrow. Mike, are you going to be here with us? Or are you leaving us?
I'll show up.
You think?
I guess I'll show up. I don't know if anybody can tell the listening audience out there, but I've had a few technical problems, and Michael has been calling me in on the phone. So I apologize if I haven't sounded like I normally sound with a microphone. But as some of you may or may not know, I am the dumbest person on earth when it comes to the internet and computers.
Amazing.
And, so I apologize.
Yeah, don't worry.
Hopefully that'll change.
We'll get it fixed
by Monday.
Yeah, we'll get it fixed. Don't worry. Yeah, and Mike.
I'll be.
Mike, I was just looking back at these news articles about different couples fighting again during the quarantine, and now it seems like Earl Thomas from the Ravens looks like he got a gun pulled on him. The wife allegedly held a gun to his head just last month when she found out.
Wait a minute. Wait. Hold on, Michael. Back up. What are you saying? I didn't catch the whole thing in the beginning.
Yeah, there's a guy by the name of Earl Thomas. He plays for the Ravens.
Okay.
And the wife pulled a gun on him.
At his house?
Yeah, well, not at his house. It was not at his house, but apparently the wife allegedly held a gun to his head last month when she found him in bed with another woman. That's why.
Oh, well, there you go. No brainer.
Well, yeah, I was
you get caught, you gotta pay.
Of
you
course.
Play with fire, you're gonna get burned.
I was just thinking about all this that had gone down with this individual here, and I was just thinking, my God, I'm glad I'm not in that situation, because one of my worst nightmares, Mike, is waking up with like my significant other next to me, and there's like a pair of scissors or a knife or a broken bottle or a gun, held to my forehead when I wake up.
Or maybe a rusty spoon.
Or a rusty spoon. I mean, the list goes on. And this guy just lived one of my nightmares, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my. Yeah, I could just imagine what that would...
Earl Thomas. Look him up, boys and girls, if you get a chance. Earl Thomas. Read into that.
Earl Thomas. Wow. That's got to be tough. As I say,
crazy
you play
situation.
With fire, you're going to get burned.
You're going to get burned. No doubt.
You make a commitment to your wife or your husband. You damn well better keep it.
That's true, Mike. Very true. My goodness.
And if you're not, you better be prepared to take the consequences. That's it. Period.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like Lorena Bobbitt all over. Well, not really.
You agree with me?
I don't agree with you entirely, because, there's like that Lorena Bobbitt out there who, remember what she did to John.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did he or did he not cheat on her? Or was she a psycho?
I have to look into that. Apparently, if I recall the story correctly, and this is going way back, Mike, so I have to think about it for a moment here, but if I recall correctly, it was after being allegedly raped, beaten, and sodomized by her husband, and that's when she cut off his penis with a knife.
Okay, so there's some discrepancy.
Exactly.
There's some issue. Knowledge that we... Sorry?
I mean, there's some issues there, yeah. Some conflict for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But does that justify cutting off his penis, though?
Well, you got to ask yourself. Again, we don't know all the details on why she did it, because it's been so long. It's been at least 20 years.
Allegedly. Yeah, but allegedly he was beating her and he raped her. Allegedly, I should say.
All I remember is when he was on the Howard Stern show after he had his penis reattached, and they had him have sex with they made him, Howard Stern made him not made him, but had him, offered him to do a porno movie. So I don't know, man.
That's pretty
it's weird.
wild.
I wish I knew all the details about it.
Yeah, it just randomly
But,
came to my mind here. And I was just thinking, man, this guy lived another nightmare.
Yep.
Whew.
Yeah, not something you want to wake up to.
Definitely not. My God. Imagine a Mike waking up and your penis is like in the bushes somewhere.
I could tell you a story.
Go ahead.
You got a minute?
Yeah, we got time here.
All right. I was a bad boy when I got married.
Oh, shit.
I was a bad boy. Yeah, I screwed up really bad a couple of times. And I admit it, fortunately, things are all okay between my ex-wife and I, and we occasionally talk. So, water under the bridge. But I'm the first to admit I really screwed up. I was young. My band was picking up. I was, meeting a lot of girls. And,
Sure.
I was taking advantage of it, and I was trying to get them I could. All right, so I end up screwing around with this girl, and she opens up her mouth, and she starts telling people about it, and it gets back to my wife at the time. This was 1990, 94. And so I decided to get this girl back because she had a big mouth, and I told her, I said, look, you're going to screw around. I don't want to get in trouble. I said, this is purely physical. I love my wife. I'm going to give her, I'm going to take her out to dinner, give her flowers, buy her candy, but you don't get that. So can you deal with that?
You don't
She
get
said,
that.
Yes. She said she'd keep her mouth shut, and she did. She started telling people, and then those people went back and told my wife at the time.
Oh,
so
Karen.
I decided I was gonna get, huh?
I said, oh, Karen. Go ahead.
Oh, Karen.
Yes.
I decided I was going to get revenge. So I called this girl up. I said, hey, I'm in, I said, hey, I'm in town. I said, let's get together. So we get together, and I had brought a pair of handcuffs with me.
Oh.
And so I get her completely in a completely vulnerable state, meaning completely nude. And I handcuffed her to the bed and made her think that we were going to play a little game, And I proceeded to, after I locked her up, the bedpost naked, I proceeded to sit down over her with an ashtray. I used to smoke at the time. And I lit up a cigarette. And at first, I didn't know what was going on. And then I started getting real close to her with the cigarette and then I said to her, so it seems you've got a big mouth, and it seems that your big mouth has gotten me in trouble with my wife.
Jesus Christ.
You should have seen, yes, you should have seen the color of her face turn from red to pure white. I won't tell you exactly what happened, but I will tell you this. I scared the living pee out of her. And, she wasn't going to screw around like that on me anymore. She definitely kept her mouth shut after that.
Good Lord, Mike.
I mean, not that she's dead or anything.
Is she alive?
We're
gonna have to call someone here. we're gonna have to call the cops here. Boys and girls. Jesus.
All I wanted to do was just make this girl pay for what she did, because she really screwed up my marriage. Or I should say, I screwed up my marriage. But she screwed up more by.
Before you did anything, did you put her in the back of your trunk there? What happened?
Well, like I said, I don't want to give away too much. It was a kind of a private moment, but
I guess so.
As I said, I wanted to make her, pay for screwing up by telling me she wasn't going to tell anybody, and she did. There was out there. You may think that I'm a total scumbag because I cheated on my wife, and you know what? You're right. I should never have did what I did. I admit that freely, and I did apologize for it. And my wife and I worked it out at the time. However, I did what I did, and what's done is done. And as I said, these things happened because I was a musician. I was meeting a lot of girls at the time.
You were being crazy.
I was getting a little crazy.
You're a little nuts there.
So, I ended up getting involved with, once again, another psycho. And
Oh, boy.
I paid for it because she opened her mouth and got me in trouble. So I guess I'm really at fault. I'm the blame for what happened between.
They Me Too'd you. You were Me Too'd, Mike.
Yeah, before the whole Me Too
Patient Zero
thing even came out.
Oh my God. Cat in the chat says, "Did she still want to sleep with you after that?" That's from Cat Monday.
Yeah, she did.
She did still want to sleep with you.
She apologized. Yeah, she apologized. Like I said, she thought I was like getting her ready for like some hanky panky, some kinky hanky panky.
some S&M play, right?
Right.
Sure,
right.
sure.
And I totally fooled her. And after I made her, like I literally made her cry for what she did. And after that was all done, like and then after I got up and like I was getting ready to leave, and she really thought I was going to leave her, chained, handcuffed to her bed.
Oh no!
I wasn't that. Yeah, but I wasn't that bad. I wasn't that mean. I just told her, I said, "You ever do this again, and there's going to be a big problem than this. There's going to be more than handcuffs." And she was like, "So call me tomorrow."
Oh my God! You were you basically told her she's going to be sleeping with the fishes.
I was going to some bacala in the when you get bacala from an Italian family, that means you're going to be sleeping with the fishes.
That's right. You Italians, you Italians, I'm telling you.
Yeah, we're pretty messed up, man.
You're a wild bunch. That's why I like the Italians.
Hey, dude, by the way, you know what I wanted to mention? We were talking about the Knights Templar.
Sure.
Did you know that the Mexican cartel apparently has one of their gangs refers to themselves as
the Knights Templar.
Knights Templar?
Yeah, I mentioned
what
it
is
on.
Up with that?
I mentioned that group to Jeffrey Prather the first time we talked to him.
Oh.
Yeah, it's it's a group from El Chapo's disbanded, sort of disgruntled, sort of misfits, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm.
Now I hope I don't get shot saying that.
Why would they call themselves that?
I can't answer that, to be honest with you, but they're a pretty powerful group out there. I'm not even sure what's going on with the Knights Templar out in Sinaloa, Mexico. I don't know. It's a really insane situation what's going on out there. That's all I can really say.
Oh, gosh. Well, let me tell you, I recently, it was this week sometime, I went online and found a website that has a lot of footage of some of the horrendous, horrible things that the cartel has done to people, and it's just really disturbing. It really is.
It really is. I'm disturbed already.
Why? Because we're talking about it?
Everything.
Mm.
I'm always disturbed.
I'll tell you, maybe you've seen it, but I saw footage of 4 women literally just like they were alive 1 second and then they just hacked them to
and they're
death.
gone.
And it was really like my stomach just turned over.
They're ruthless out there, Mike. The cartels.
Fuck, dude, they are fucking ruthless. I mean, how anybody could do that to anyone?
Yeah, they kill you and they hang you up there by the freeway, let everyone see you.
Mm-hmm. I saw what they did to this one guy. They held him down. They cut off his hands. They peeled the flesh off his face.
That's right.
And then they began to cut off his head using a box cutter. So it was just like slice, 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 slice. That's how they were cutting him apart. I never saw anything so horrifying in my life.
Yeah.
It was like a horror movie.
You remember the old VHS videos of Faces of Death back in the day?
I do.
Pretty crazy stuff, right? Remember going into a video store and seeing that in the back?
I do. And
the
here's
good
the
old
interesting
days.
thing about that. Here's the interesting thing about that. You can go onto YouTube or any privately owned website and see tons of footage of people being murdered. Yet at one point in time in this country, snuff films, as they were once referred to as, were illegal. And now they're all over the internet for just about anyone to see.
There's lots of insane material out there. I remember years ago of the Russian crime spree of these young kids that were going around and taking a hammer and just killing elderly people in the park.
Ugh,
some
horrible.
insane
Just
shit.
Horrible. People are messed up, Michael.
They really are,
honestly.
man. They really are.
Like what
Sick, sad world, Mike.
Yeah. Like what kind of pleasure can you get from doing something so horrible to an innocent person? I just don't get it.
People have lost their minds, Mike.
I'll say.
That's what it comes down to. So, Mike, I have to say we are close to wrapping it up here. Any final thoughts before we set sail here? And of course, we will return tomorrow with one Marshall Masters, and that shall be pretty interesting, Mike.
Oh, we have Marshall on tomorrow?
Yeah, he's on tomorrow night, and he's been pretty wild lately, by the way. He's been very unfiltered. So he's going to let loose, Mike.
That's so weird. I was just looking at his page today, and I saw him doing that interview when I saw the logo for the Michael Decon program, like on his front page of his website. That's what I sent that picture to you today. I didn't even realize we were doing the interview tomorrow.
That happens.
How funny.
Well, that happens.
Yeah. Maybe we should get down the road. Maybe we should get someone from the Mexican cartel to interview.
Oh yeah, that'd be an easy task. I'll end up dead for sure.
Yeah, you and me both.
Well, we'll be dead by the end of the week.
Pass on that. No thanks.
Yeah, we'll have to pass on that for now, but for sure. Any final words, Mike, before we wrap it up? Any plugs? Go ahead.
Just the normal ones, everyone. Just standard stuff. My music website, MikeHideous.com, MYKE hideous.com. My art and photography website, horribleartwork.com. And if you'd like to connect with me on Facebook, it's facebook.com/hideousmike, MYKE. Thank you very much, Michael. I had a blast as always. Great guest tonight. And thank you all for listening. Love you guys. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Sure. Take care, Mike.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Mahalo. Good night. And there he goes, boys and girls, the one and only Mr. Mike Hideous. My goodness, what an episode we've had tonight. Don't forget, if you are a fan, a hardcore listener, there is a Patreon that you can go to, patreon.com/Michael Decon, or go to michaeldecon.com. All the information is there. Patreon.com/Michael Decon. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so on YouTube and take us on the road with you. Download the podcast rendition of this show on iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, which I prefer, and of course Spotify. But Castbox is very nice. And of course, international listeners out there, thank you for your support as well. Canada, Germany, the UK, Norway, and Brazil. Very awesome. Whatever it is that you choose to believe, you must adapt, boys and girls. I always say that here in the closing, and it is true. All control has been lost, and we are looking into the abyss without a rescue party inside, boys. And with that said, the world is a mysterious place, and life itself is a mystery. Until next time, good night, everybody.